Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us here on USA Global TV. And hello to our friends listening on Business Talk Radio. I am Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and I'm so happy to be here. We have a brand new show with a brand new co-host. This is so exciting. Our show today is The Art of Mental Health Wealth. And my co-host and friend is Jenetta Barry and the Epiphany Process. Let's bring her out. Hi there, Jenetta.
Hello, Dr. Jacalyn, and hello, everybody out there. I'm so inspired to be here today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be working with you on this. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Oxford at the moment in UK, so that's where my home is, and and it's a bright sunny day, so all goes well.
I'm glad to hear that. Jenetta, I just want to give a little bit of background to our audience, people who might not have seen you on the show that we just had on, what was it? Monday. Where the official launch of USA Global TV. And so you've been a guest before, and I want to thank Ian Palm-Turner and Helena Shard for introducing us. And I was so moved by your story, and there's no way that I could even begin to tell it based on what you have been through. So let's just start off. Tell our audience what it is you do today and what was the motivation or what things happened that brought you to create the Epiphany Process. And then we'll discuss what that process is.
What I do today is I have for many years, about 14, 15 years now, assisted people internationally online through any type of crisis, whether it's personal crisis within relationships at home or work or socially, whether it's depression and feeling suicidal. I've even been flown through to assist people who've been part of or become victims of terrorist attacks and so on. So I've helped people all over the world all this time. And the backstory to this is that journey started. I actually used to be a motivational speaker, a sales motivational speaker. And I noticed that people were coming back to me and after a week, all fired up when they leave me, but coming back saying, we need another fix of Jenetta or another dose. And it sounded like I was their drug. And in actual fact, that's what I believe happens when you just motivate people. And I felt out of integrity and took myself off for quite a few years working and expanding on my intuition, because after all, CEOs of top companies will tell you that their greatest decisions have come from their gut feel. So I was expanding that when yet again, I began to feel out of integrity because people were coming to me and saying, could I kind of get a sense of what they should or shouldn't do or be or shouldn't be? And they trusted my intuition more than theirs. And I just felt that I was out of integrity again. So at the time that I was actually questioning this all again, my greatest life test happened. And it happened one day when my 16-year-old daughter, Jenny, and I were having a discussion, and I was laying really firm housekeeping rules, safekeeping rules for her and everybody else living in that house. And she balked at them and said she refused to do them and took herself off in an enormous rage to pack and leave home. And after a while, I sensed something wasn't right, and I went off to her bedroom to find her, and I found that she had taken her life in her bathroom. And it was devastating. It put me down to ground zero, and at the same time, there were a whole load of conflicting thoughts and emotions I had to deal with that happened at the same time. It was really a tough time. And prophetically, 9 months after Jenny died, having lost everything, my marriage, there was a whole series of dominoes that just went with that loss. I actually decided that I had to do more than with the skills I had. And I had to find something that was accurate, because up until then, I tried this process or that method or that approach or conventional therapy, and they were helpful. But there was always a feel of trial and error with them. And I knew if I was going to survive this ordeal, I had to find something accurate. So I started studying and seeing where it was that I could bring in an accurate solution to all the different levels of emotions and overwhelm and PTSD even that I was dealing with. And with that, I was able to move forward and start helping others. I've called it the Epiphany Process. And today's called the yin and yang of science, because it really is basically using that approach. And it's been an amazing journey. Since then, I've written a book about, Jenny's energy left here, but science tells us that energy is neither created or destroyed. So where was my daughter? So I started chronicling where that energy had shifted to or hadn't shifted to. And then after a while, I realized that I wanted to do something meaningful. I thought it would be a film. But I then realized that, well, in fact, it started showing itself, and again through various signs that is subject for another time, that showed us that it was a theatrical production. So we put together nearly 4 years ago now a theatrical production called Insight, which through the medium of the arts, that's why this show is called The Art of Creating Mental Health Wealth. And we used contemporary dance and voiceover and song and all sorts of things to create the understanding of what it's like to feel compromised, what it's like to be the carer of those who are compromised, because it's a very lonely journey, and solutions, accurate solutions, all through the medium of performing arts. And so that was an amazing event as well, and that's going to go worldwide. That's the plan, that it'll be performed all over the world. And then also we realized that not long after Jen died, that she'd actually died on World Mental Health Day, which is the 10th of October. So we now celebrate mental health, wellness, and wealth every 10th of October, using theatre and the arts to celebrate that, to also portray it so that it softens the message but deepens the impact. And we're going into the third World Jennysday this year, 2022. So that's an overview for the moment.
That's quite a journey you've been on, Jenetta. And I know that through that whole process, there were all kinds of emotions and decisions and loss and gratitude, all kinds of things that you went through that we couldn't possibly show justice to in the short time that we have together. But I thank you so much for your transparency. And I can't imagine how difficult it must be to recount the story. And I just thank you for being here and being so strong.
Well, thank you. It was very difficult to begin with. It's got easier with time, but it's a lifetime process, a loss like that. So it's not going away anywhere fast. Some people think I'm in pretend land, but it's not. Various things come up from time to time, and thank goodness I've got this process to work it through when something happens and I go, oh, wow, or anniversaries or whatever. So it is a lifetime process, but it has got easier. But what happens when you step more and more out in the truth and it feels easy, then the judgment, people go, are you for real? And who do you think you are? So it comes with its challenges as well, as you say.
And Jenetta, I was just going to ask you about that. People have comments. We talked yesterday about throwing rocks, people throwing rocks at us. So when someone says something like that to you, are you for real? Are you living in reality? How do you react? What do you do or not do?
Well, often I just ignore it because I know it's their issue. If it's something that is pertinent and it would be wise for me to take note of, I take it and I process it and go, okay, there could be elements of that to remain authentic, it's always important to be open to those rocks being thrown and understanding the value of them. So I take them and I decide, do I ignore it or do I respond, or do I take it and work it and ignore it or respond? There's a whole, depending on what's happening, there's a whole process of how I handle it. Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting one. I even got accused of, by sharing my story, I got messaged that I had got 3 people to want to commit suicide by listening to my story. It's things like that where you stop and you go, wow. It's huge.
It's interesting because you mentioned at the very beginning of the program that you were a motivational speaker in sales. And it's funny because I was in sales my whole career until I did this. And people were coming to you and saying, hey, you really have something. You've really inspired us. And we do know that we can influence people, but people ultimately are making decisions based on the choices that they're making, right?
Yes, and based on their value system and past experiences that have molded their perception of how things are. Because I always talk about there's a positive and a negative reality, one-sided. Often we get hooked into the one side of what's happening as being the truth. But when you can get both sides of the reality into a place of focus, you're in a place of being able to see what actually is happening. You're seeing it's my clients always say it gives them the opportunity to step back and see the whole big picture, and they go, holy moly, I never looked at it that way before.
And I think it's also important, just to build on what you said, that when something bad does happen and it's unforeseen, it's unplanned, that there possibly are some good things that can come from it if we look at it from a certain perspective. And you just mentioned that you have anniversaries and holidays and things that come up that are obviously not going to go away, but you're looking at Jenny's passing and her loss in a different way, looking at her energy, right? And you're looking at how can you take your experience, her experience, and help other people.
Exactly. So if I look at that big picture, losing Jenny the way we did has enabled me to step into my greatest life purpose with the biggest amount of authenticity. And that wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't had the loss the way we had it. So I actually wake up every morning and say, thank you, Jenny. I love and appreciate you, because some really real conversations have come out through this loss. And if I could say that, so often I'll have a client in front of me who will say something or do something, and I'll go, that's what Jenny would say. So, or they're saying it in a way that's so much more succinct than Jenny could at times. And it feels like, from somebody who kept on telling me that her throat always felt so closed up and she couldn't express herself and she felt she wasn't being heard correctly, it feels like that fine tuning, like she and I are on a mission of a different kind, because now there's not the human blockage of communication. It's quite profound.
And your throat is open and you're able to communicate and share for the two of you, it sounds like.
It really feels like that. And often stuff will come out. And when Jenny wasn't in her place of angst, the wisdom that came out of this child of mine used to throw me and go, where do you get that from? And often stuff comes out my mouth and I'd go, that's what Jenny would say. So it's been so intriguing, as though, as much as it's difficult, it's been heart opening. And I was using that term the other night. It really is a heart opening adventure in its difficulty. And that's why I use art. Anything that's worth creating comes from stress, pressure, and pain. You look at it anywhere. When you look at artists will admit to you that their greatest work has come from their greatest life tests so often, and it's pushed them to manifest and create whatever it is they've created. And whether it's birthing a child or whatever it is, that stress, pressure, and pain is the very thing that brings the new form and the new way of approaching things and opens hearts and balances. So it's not about getting rid of the stress, pressure, and pain. It's about learning how to very, very skillfully manage that stress, pressure, and pain so that it becomes a work of genius. In actual fact, that you access your genius. And that's what I'm finding I'm doing more and more. And in my moments of greatest doubt, don't get me wrong, I still have my moments where I go, who are you, Jenetta? You know, who do you think you are? And what are you doing? And is this really worthwhile? And when I'm working long hours and it's a big slog, I go, and I'm doing this, let me think about it. And then I go into that place going, this is the creative side. I'm going through a creative phase. It's sore, it's horrible. I'd much rather pick up a book and look out the window, but I also would much rather create something meaningful. That's more valuable to me, and that's what pushes me on.
I think you just hit on something that I'd like to discuss a little bit further, and then we'll take a break. The work that you do, it has to feel so rewarding. And at the same time, it has to feel like there's a huge amount of responsibility because people are entrusting you with the process. And so how do you take care of yourself? How do you keep your mental health in a good place?
Yeah, it's a very good question. In actual fact, the least strain is in working with the people I work with, because I'm very mindful of the people I work with. I don't just take anybody. I take the people who are ready to work this, so that it's not a waste of their time and my time and their money. So the people who are working with me are really ready. They can't take another minute of living the way they are. And so when we first initially meet, it's a mutual, yes, we identify with Jenetta in the process, and I'm going, yes, I know I can help you. So generally, it's such an amazing journey watching people shift within even one session. By the end of one session, they're sitting there going, and it moves them fast and empowers them to use the skills themselves in a quick, rewarding way, enlightening way. That's why it's called the Epiphany Process. They lighten up, they become enlightened. But for me, it's the behind the scenes. There's so much that, as you and I know, and we were also discussing this yesterday, there's so much that is behind the scene. For me to sit here talking today, to have an Epiphany Process, to have a World Jennysday, to have an Insight production, the part of organizing that can be really daunting at times. And sometimes you take a step forward and 15 back, and then 20 forward and 5 back, and you're going, oh, this is so tough. That's what I find tiring.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here to talk about this. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to delve a little bit further into the epiphany process. And then I want to talk about who we'd like to have on the show and how people can actually register to be part of this wonderful opportunity.
It'll be wonderful.
All right, we'll be right back here on USA Global TV and Business Talk Radio. Stay with us.
Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Story Garden. Your host, Diane Boehm. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Diane Floyd Boehm tells wonderful stories that warm the heart, spark the imagination, and unite people and families across generations. For children, Diane's Harry the Camel connects with all of us who've ever wondered how different our lives might have been if only we'd been born something better, like a wonderful horse instead of an ordinary camel. In the end, we all learn along with Harry that there's nothing better than just being yourself. Diane's Little Girl in the Moon looks down on earthbound children and wonders if they know she's just like them. A story of love, home, and the bond between mother and daughter, its powerful theme that we're each of us different yet all of us the same plants a seed in children that promise us to blossom within a loving and trusting grown-up. Diane's new biography, Rise, recounts the experiences of her grandmother, Ruby, to reveal the hidden strength of the human spirit. Ruby's story inspires all of us to become the best versions of ourselves. You'll find all of Diane's delightful books and much more at dianefloydboehm.com. Visit dianefloydboehm.com. That's dianefloydboehm.com.
My stomach issues make me want to stay home, but that's not an option. No matter how prepared I am, I still feel nervous. Enough is enough.
If this sounds familiar, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation can offer you support and connect you with a specialist.
Don't keep your symptoms to yourself. Get help at spillyourguts.org today.
process.com. And of course, there's the two websites, which is theepiphanyprocess.com and worldjennysday.com. You're very welcome.
Do reach out to Jenetta and have a chat, and hopefully we'll see you on the show here. Let's talk a little bit about the epiphany process. And for people who are not aware, what is an epiphany, and what are some of the highlights or the high levels of this process?
What is an epiphany? To start it on this leg, you know how when you're really, really challenged by something that's overwhelming you and it seems to be distracting you from everything you're trying to do in a day, those really testing times. And in the light of day, you can sit down and go, okay, I'm going to take this action and do that and say that to that person. And then I'm going to do that. And then after that, and you have this whole plan of action that helps you feel safe, that you've got a plan and some solutions in place for you. And then that night you go, okay, I'm okay, I've got this plan. And you go to bed, and you know that feeling where you wake up at 3 a.m. going, and your emotions are saying to your thoughts, I don't agree. There's huge conflict going there where your emotions go, I don't trust it. I don't trust anything. It feels too overwhelming. The plan's not going to work. There's all this conflicting conversation that practically goes on all the time in every single one of us. But in extreme circumstances, the volume goes up. So the secret with the epiphany process is it enables you to take that conflict within inside you and to get the two conversations to start talking differently to each other. And that's huge because, in fact, we call it in quantum mechanics being complementary opposites. So it's understanding that they'll always oppose, because that's the part of the yin and yang. They'll oppose, but if you can get them to oppose and complement at the same time, so that the two are, it's almost like a compromise within yourself. You're having compromising conversations. And that's very powerful, because when you can have that sort of internal conversation with yourself, it's then possible and far more easy to do the same with people around you, because you're already doing it within, and it makes a huge difference. So to put it in a nutshell, we're in a society that's quite addicted to being positive. And that addiction began after World War II, when in 1952, exactly that year, a book was published called The Power of Positive Thinking. And it advocated to everybody that after the nightmare of World War II, it would be really, really helpful to eliminate all negative thought, word, and deed, and to only be positive. The more positive you can be, the more healthy, wealthy, and wise you can become. And it's become the mantra of the Western world and most of the world, where everybody says, be positive, be positive. And don't get me wrong, being positive is very, very important. It's vital. But what happens is, if you're only looking at one side of what's happening and you're eliminating the negative side, you're only seeing half of what it is. And I'll explain it like this. We're in a world that operates in cycles. And whether it's the noise, the decibels of cycles coming out my mouth now, or the electricity lighting my face right now and operating this machinery. And if you study an electric cycle or a sound cycle or a brainwave cycle or an emotional cycle, all cycles operate with equal amount of positive and negative charge in them. So if we were to take the negative charge out of electricity and say, negative's so bad, well, we know what it does to electricity. It disempowers it. There's no power. And yet we've gone around with this belief system that we have to eliminate the negative thought, word, and deed in our psyche. And it's why so many people find themselves in this extreme place of trying to be as positive as possible and judging the negative side of themselves as being unloved and unlovable. So half of who they are, because there are nearly 5,000 human traits listed in the dictionary, and approximately half are positive and half are negative. So if you're going around saying the half of who I am is unacceptable, it's unlovable and unloved, That's a lot of burden to bear when basically what it's effectively doing is disempowering. And the more you try and be more one side on this continuum of positive and negative, where in the middle is the line of balance of thoughts and emotions, the more you try and be more positive, the more you polarize like two magnets away from that line of balance, where the balance of thought and emotion is. So you keep on going more and more over there. So if you try and be only kind and gentle and thoughtful and giving and loving and peaceful, and here you are, we call that being in a place of fantasy. And also most of us pride ourselves from being as positive as possible. But because our unconscious consciousness knows that it's out of balance, it automatically catapults us over onto the other side in the equal and opposite direction. So we go from fantasy to nightmare in the extreme, and feeling guilty and ashamed that we haven't been able to maintain that high, unrealistic standard we've set ourselves on the other side. So the conflict is huge that's going on there. The more you try to be more one than the other, the more you polarize yourself away from that line of center, and the more bipolar you become. So what this process does is it enables you to reverse the polarities and bring the conflicting thoughts and emotions into a place of balance, so that like two magnets that were doing this, they're now doing this. So they're pulling together and pulling apart at the same time. And that's the complementary opposite I was talking about. When that happens, when you manage to take your biggest charge that's bothering you the most and bring it in back to center line, it creates two half-wave cycles on that line that looks like the figure S. When you get to the top of that S, it creates a photon, which in science, they call it photon, but in Greek, it means phos. Phos is light. Photo is light. So as that two half-wave cycles occur, you have what I call the epiphany moment. Sometimes I even hear or watch the person I'm working with go, and there's a lightening up on every level, on a cellular level, on a physical level, on a mental and emotional, spiritual, every level suddenly lightens up, and whatever it was they were charged up about is in a place of manageability. And they're seeing that bigger picture I spoke about earlier. They're going, oh my gosh, I was only looking at it that way. Oh, wow. And that's how an epiphany moment is created.
Jenetta, I have to share back here while I had you on Spotlight. I think I had an epiphany, because I think what you just described about looking at things that can be perceived only in a negative way, we can look at them from a different way. And that's what I'm actually doing, thinking, let me look at some of these things that have been happening from a different perspective. So thank you for sharing that. That's
You are most welcome.
Jenetta, I want to just have our audience understand what they can expect to see week after week. You did touch on that a little bit, but they become loyal followers of our show, and week after week, what are they going to see and hear?
Well, I'd like to put a little bit of flexibility in it, so that we might have some episodes which are very different to what we're planning, because I'd love to experiment. That's part of the creativity. But overall, with it being about the art in mental health wealth, in World Jenny's Day, 10th of October 2021, we had a number of artists and performing artists who participated in that day. So our in fact, before that I must go back. I've missed out one very special guest we've got next week, which is Susie Nathanson. And perhaps you'd like to introduce Susie a little bit, and then I'll mention a couple of other people.
Fantastic. So Susie Nathanson has been a guest before. It was on Celebrate Great Britain Royally Rich. And I actually had the pleasure of meeting her once again through Ian and Helena. And she is an artist. She does incredible work. And it's a process. I'm not an expert in this field, but I know she uses digital technology to create her masterpieces. And she is a very spiritual person, and I feel that she's a great fit for helping us realize how mental health wealth is connected to, or can be connected to, creativity.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm really inspired that we've got her as our first guest. I'm looking forward to learning more about her as well. And then we're going to move on the following week to Kev Orkian. Kev Orkian is a very well-known British comedian and actor. He was slated to win Britain's Got Talent at one particular year, and has just released his very own documentary on Netflix about Armenia, because he's originally from Armenia. And he's World Jenny's Day, one of World Jenny's Day's ambassadors. And we're going to be having Kev as our next guest after Susie to talk about his journey and how mental health wealth has been enhanced because he's used theatre and the arts and comedy to create that in his most difficult moments. So that'll be Kev. And then the other one we've got is somebody called Mark Deeks. Mark's known as the piano guy. Yeah. And Mark had a great amount of influence on World Jenny's Day because he took a song that's very close to my heart. My dad was a record producer and had a record label in East Africa. I grew up in East Africa. And one of the songs became world famous. It's been sung by Harry Belafonte and Brothers Four and Boney M, and many people have sung it. And Mark, during lockdown, took this and his choir here in UK, and they each individually recorded this song Malaika. It's called Malaika, which is angel in Swahili. And he pieced it together as one piece of choir singing as part of tribute to World Jenny's Day. So we'll be interviewing him. He's a big advocate on mental health wellness and using his piano playing and his piano teaching towards enhancing that. So he'll be our guest after that. And then we've got Maxine Ryan, who is a jazz singer here in UK. And she's performed at the Royal Albert Hall and all over, and she performed for us on Clubhouse on World Jenny's Day. So those are the first three we've got going, and I've got a whole list of people we're busy chatting with now. I'm just so excited.
That is so exciting. And I was wondering if I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you mind humming a little bit of that tune?
Oh, you are putting me on the spot. Okay, I'm going to just do the first few lines, and then you lost me after that. So it's in Swahili, and it goes like this. Malaika nakupenda, malaika, malaika nakupenda, malaika. And that's all I'm going to give you.
Wow, that was beautiful.
But if you go into YouTube, and one of my favorite renditions is Harry Belafonte and Miriam Makeba. It's a beautiful, beautiful rendition of it. And you'll find all different renditions there on YouTube. Just Google it there.
Can you spell it for our audience, please?
Yes, M-A-L, Mal, A-I-K-A, Malaika. And I even have a granddaughter named Malaika now because of Malaika the song, and Dad having published it and put it out there.
That is such a beautiful story. I love that. I can't wait to go over to YouTube and check it out. Janetta, we've come to the end of the show. Can you believe it? It's
I
just
can't. It's gone like
flew
that.
by, flew by. So I'm going to ask you to give your contact information, and then we're going to close out with a video that I think is appropriate for our topic. And it's by Laser Girl, whom we had on our show on Monday. So Jenetta, what's the best way for people to reach out to you, and who would you like to contact you?
I'd love anybody who's really relating to what we've been talking about today and creating solutions through the arts. If anybody'd like to talk about that, because that's what this is about. It's accessing our creative genius. So anybody who'd like to expand this conversation with Dr. Jacalyn and I'd love to hear. We would love to hear from you. And you can contact me at Jenetta, JENETTA, at theepiphanyprocess.com or on the website epiphanyprocess.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenetta. I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah.
And we're just going to, as I mentioned, close out with Laser Girl. Her latest track is called Warrior. And then Jenetta and I will be back to see you next week. And Jenetta, safe travels to you, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Do you want to tell our audience where you'll be joining from next week?
I'll be in Nairobi next week. I'm traveling back to East Africa. Lockdown has prevented me from being back home, and I leave on Friday, so it'll be amazing.
Amazing. Well, safe travels to you, and thank you again for being here on this platform and bringing this incredible content and your story. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Thank you too.
All right, bye everyone, and hello to Laser Girl.